Hey, this morning we're going to talk about a time when Jesus shows up, and this one's in the Gospels. Okay, so I didn't want to steal anything out of Josh's class starting Wednesday, but Jesus is going to show up in this one, and it's pretty normal. And today, as we read John 21, so that tells you where we're going, you might have the thought, we just talked about this. It's true. It's been mentioned recently. I brought it up before. And it also, like, even when we read it, you're going to be like, wait, this sounds familiar, it is, but it's different. It's going to seem like it's the same story, but it's not. And so this one is not so much about the miraculous catch of fish, but the interaction that Jesus has with Peter and with the disciples. And although there's a miraculous catch that sets up this moment, it's a pretty cool time when Jesus shows up. And we're going to spend a little more time in John 21 than we did the last time we were there. And so before we read it, let's set the stage for what's going on when this takes place. So Jesus has, last week was Easter, and Jesus has already been to the cross, and he's raised from the dead, so they celebrate. He appeared to the Marys, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, and he talks to them. And he tells them this in Matthew 28:10. He says, "Then Jesus said to them, 'Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there.'" So Jesus shows up in Jerusalem, and he communicates to the Marys and says, "Hey, tell the disciples to go to Galilee." Now, that's a little bit of a journey. So they're going to make a little jaunt, a little walk up from Jerusalem to Galilee, and that's what happens. And they are there, and it's there that they're just kind of living life because they're not really sure what to do. They're just told to go wait, and he'll meet them there. So we read in John chapter 21 this. "Later, Jesus appeared to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee. This is how it happened. Several of the disciples were there: Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples." How do you like to be the two other disciples who don't get even named? Yeah, okay. "Simon Peter said, 'I'm going fishing.' 'We'll come too,' they all said. So they went out in the boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, 'Fellows, have you caught any fish?' 'No,' they replied. Then he said, 'Throw out your net on the right-hand side of the boat, and you'll get some.' So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there was so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, 'It's the Lord.' When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to shore, for they were about 100 yards from shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread. 'Bring some of the fish you've just caught,' Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. 'Now come and have some breakfast,' Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, 'Who are you?' They knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish. This was the third time Jesus had appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' 'Yes, Lord,' Peter replied. 'You know I love you. Then feed my lambs,' Jesus told him. Then Jesus repeated the question, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' 'Yes, Lord,' Peter said. 'You know I love you.' 'Then take care of my sheep,' Jesus said. A third time he asked him, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, 'Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you.' Jesus said, 'Then feed my sheep. I tell you the truth, when you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, You will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told them, follow me. The disciples had done exactly what Jesus had told them to do. Go back to Galilee. But he didn't give them any other instructions on that. Just go back to Galilee and wait for me. I don't know about you, but I'm not a good waiter. Yeah, I'm not patient. No patience. Like, I don't have them. Ansel was laughing at me this week. I think we were driving, and, some days, I don't know what it is. I know it must be that God is trying to teach me something. But for some reason, I am able to be on a two-lane road, like four-lane road, but 2 lanes going in the direction I'm wanting to go. And the 2 people in front of me are racing to see how slow they can go. I mean, it's 40. I get it if you only want to do 37. I get that. But 22 is not what I had in mind. I don't wait well. I had to wait this morning on my coffee. Yeah. And I did wait well there. Because they're people, they're working, they were clearly busy, they weren't like just talking. So the disciples, they're told to go to Galilee and wait. And I'm going to show up at some point, Jesus says. So they're living life, and Peter's like, I'm going fishing. He can't take it anymore, right? I'm going fishing. And this isn't a moment of disobedience because Jesus didn't give them any instructions, really. He just said, go to Galilee, even though he's walked away to follow Jesus, walked away from fishing and all that. Jesus doesn't tell them what to do. He didn't tell them, I'm going to meet you at Chick-fil-A at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. He didn't tell them that. He just said, go to Galilee and wait. But I want to point something out here that I think is really worth seeing. And that is, Jesus shows up in the ordinary. They were just fishing. I don't know. That may be an overstatement. They were chucking a net into the water and then pulling it back in. They weren't actually fishing because they didn't catch anything. These guys were supposed to be professionals. It's a recurring theme for them. You know, how many times has Jesus said, hey, have you caught anything? Nope, we fished all night, didn't catch a thing. How did Peter make a living? It's beside the point. But the normal thing was they were fishing. It's what they did. It's what they knew. It's what they were doing. And Jesus shows up in the normal, in the ordinary, which I think is important to understand. Jesus shows up in our ordinary moments of life. And he wants to have moments with us, even in the ordinary times. So Jesus appears on the shore, and guess what? Another recurring theme, they didn't recognize him. He shows up, they don't recognize him. It's interesting how John refers to himself in the Gospels. If you don't know, he's referring to himself when he says, the disciple whom Jesus loved recognized him. Yeah, okay. He does, like that's what he says. And so, Jesus appears there, and he's in the midst of them, or he's on the shore, and he calls out and says, hey, chuck the nets on the right side of the boat. And they follow his instructions. Again, think about the nets for a minute. They're just nets that you're throwing in, or they're putting in a net that's kind of got a weight on it. It's going to go down. It's going to be like this, and it's going to catch fish this way, or it's going to drop over top of them, and they use weights and get them. And they're just going to trap the fish in the nets as they are trying to get out. And that's kind of how this is happening. And so Jesus tells them, Throw your net in the other side. And look, remember, they hadn't caught anything. And there's struggle in that as well. There's a failure. Like, it's one thing for me to go fishing and not catch anything. It's another thing for somebody who that's their living and that's how they were surviving and they're catching fish and selling them off. And me, like, I'm frustrated if I go out for an hour and a half or 2 hours and don't catch anything. I'm just packing up and going home because this is worthless. I'm not going to waste my time, right? That's just the way it works. And I do like fishing, but if I'm not catching anything, I'm done. Like, I'm not fishing all night. There's no way. I'm just like, nope, not doing it. They are in the midst of another night of an unsuccessful fishing trip. And even in the ordinary, unsuccessful moments, Jesus shows up in our lives and shows up in their life. And God is at work in those ordinary moments. He's at work while you're working. It may take some time to recognize Jesus in those moments, but I'm going to challenge a little bit to start looking for Jesus working in ordinary moments of your life. Like when everything is just kind of, this is just normal, I'm just going to work or I'm going to school and I'm just doing this. And where is Jesus showing up in those moments? And where is he wanting to use us in those moments? And what's he wanting to accomplish in our lives when we are just going through the normal? We may have difficulty recognizing God at work, but we should be looking and listening for those moments that God is setting up for us. Jesus often meets us in everyday, seemingly unspiritual moments. Are we sensitive enough to recognize his presence? Sometimes we need our friends around us to help us recognize his presence, but do we recognize his presence? And then, once they realize who it is, and Jesus, is there, and Peter recognizes it, what's Peter do? He jumps in the water. And there's all kinds of, like, when you read verses 7 and 8, it says, the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed to shore. Look, he probably did have some sort of clothes on, just to clarify, before this, and he was probably grabbing other things that, his outer tunic and all those things, and he just would have jumped in the water to swim to shore just so he could be there with Jesus. This is a Peter kind of thing, right? Like, he's probably already been diving the water anyway with the nets and those kind of things. So understand, that's why he was doing that. So he's getting wet and all those things, but he's jumping in. He's like, I am going to get there first. That's a Peter kind of deal. Like he's that guy. I mean, he is like, nope, I'm going to be there before everybody else. But when they get there, they found breakfast waiting for them. Fish cooking over a charcoal fire and some bread. This is verse 9 through 14. Bring some of the fish you just caught, Jesus said. So Simon Peter went aboard and dragged the net to the shore. There were 153 large fish, and yet the net hadn't torn. Now come and have some breakfast, Jesus said. None of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? For they knew it was the Lord. Then Jesus served them the bread and the fish, and this was the third time Jesus has appeared to his disciples since he had been raised from the dead. Isn't this just like Jesus, right? I mean, here they are, they're out there working, and Jesus prepares them breakfast. Simple, yet really significant. Once again, Jesus is there, and he's there to meet a need. And that need that's being met is a physical need. He's there and he's going to feed them breakfast. Now, if you were to travel to that area still, now there's a church been built there. There's kind of a different things that they call it kind of the place of the charcoal. I mean, it's kind of there, and you can see kind of the area on the Sea of Galilee, the shore and all that, where Jesus probably did this. And so when you look at that, Jesus is bringing the disciples to the shore, and he is saying, hey, let's eat together, which was a normal kind of thing. For those of you that are relatively new to Mission Hill, like today's an opportunity just to eat together. Eating together really does matter. So like, the choice of food isn't always, our favorites. If anybody knows me, pizza's not one of my favorites. I'm kind of a pizza snob. And so like, I like the stuff like, I grew up eating Sicilian pizza and stuff like that on the East Coast. And, it was just like, so anything we buy around here predominantly is substandard. But come anyway for our substandard pizza. And because really the important thing is we just want to hang out with you. Because something about eating together has power. And I say all that to say it's important for us in our lives to find moments to eat together and to have times together that we develop relationship and connection. Because in those moments, in our conversations, in those times of eating and sharing a meal together, there is a powerful spiritual thing that takes place. And guess what? It's also a time when Jesus shows up. Jesus shows up in the midst of those moments. And it provides this opportunity for hospitality and conversation and growing and learning about other people. Jesus not only provides for our needs, but he's inviting us into close fellowship with him, but also fellowship with one another. And those moments of growing closer to him in fellowship, yes, that's going to happen through prayer and reading the Bible. And that's where we're going to learn about God's character and nature is from reading the scriptures. I get it. But our communion with him is not limited to moments like this, where we're gathered as a body of believers in worship and listening to the word and growing. That's part of it. It's also not limited to our times of reading the word and prayer. It is in those moments that God shows up in the ordinary that can help us grow and see him at work, right? When we start to recognize Jesus in our everyday moments, there's some power in that. There's some power in knowing that God cares and he is working. It can be as simple as, I'm going to pick on Angela for a minute. It's as simple as Angela showing up in a grocery store, and when she goes to buy something and it's on sale, she is immediately reminded of God's love and care for her in the everyday. And she finds lots of deals. I'm just telling you. So maybe if you're looking for deals, maybe you ought to kind of make a deal with God and just go, God, when I see deals and you bring things that I need at a great price, I'm just going to thank you for them. Maybe there's a coincidence here. Maybe there's a connection. I don't know. I don't necessarily get deals, partially because I don't go in the store. I do not look for them. I do, but I don't shop a ton. But just like the disciples were invited to a breakfast on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, Jesus is inviting every one of us with an invitation to commune with him, to connect with him, to learn from him, to grow. And those moments are not limited to just those moments of our lives where we're doing something spiritual. We ought to be seeing God at work in our lives all the time. And that sensitivity to it is he's doing something in those moments. But then we get to the place where we all know this story gets to, and that is restoration. After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And the question is, what is he referring to? Is he referring to his boats and all that stuff? Or is he referring to the people around him? It doesn't matter really which of those it is. Peter replies, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. We talked about this a few weeks ago, right? And when we'll briefly talk it through again, but Peter denied Jesus 3 times, exactly how Jesus predicted. And here in this moment, Jesus takes the time to help Peter understand. He is forgiven, that his denials and his failures didn't disqualify him from following and serving Jesus or becoming a leader. Jesus addresses Peter's failure without condemnation. He doesn't like, oh, Peter, I know you bombed out on me. Like you had all this pride moment. You're like, oh man, I'm so good. I'm going to follow you to death. I'm gonna, I'm with you. He didn't say all that. He didn't say, remember that big talk you had? Your mouth was running, and and a few seconds later you couldn't handle the pressure. He didn't do that. He just simply asked him, Peter, do you love me more than these? And Peter's like, yeah, I love you. And each time the answer was the same, feed my sheep. Now, there's been many attempts to find deeper meaning in the word choice of the Greek, and that really isn't the point here. In fact, this interaction would have taken place in Aramaic. And like the English language, the Aramaic doesn't have 3 different words for love. The important lesson here is that Jesus forgave and restored Peter. And Jesus does the same thing for all of us. He restores us by calling us back to love. He doesn't call us back in shame. Failure doesn't disqualify us from being used by God. Now, I do think that our love for God ought to spur us on towards serving. It ought to push us towards serving Jesus. And that serving is not limited to within the walls of the church. Again, I think we miss it when we limit our serving to a building and in ministry just amongst the church. I think our serving needs to be outside. You see Jesus doing a lot of things, and a lot of miracles were done in the face of crowds of people or individuals that were far from him and didn't know him. This miracle here with the fish and the miraculous catch had one purpose in mind, and that was just to drive home to Peter and the disciples that he loved them and he was going to show up and he was going to help them in the midst of everything he did in the future. And that's all we understand. We probably should understand that same very thing, that God is present and he is at work in our everyday moments and doesn't matter about our past failures. So Jesus pushes at Peter and he ends with the thought and the same kind of command he's given previously. Follow me. So he continually says to him, follow me. And Jesus reveals to Peter that it's going to not go well for you. It's going to be rough. Your life is going to end a little abruptly, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to be led by other people. The cost of following me is going to be great. I realized previously you struggled, that you couldn't do it. Now I'm telling you, not because of your confidence in who you are, that you're going to go through difficulty. I'm telling you, you're going to go through difficulty because of following me, but you're going to be different and you're going to be better. And you're going to be able to navigate through those painful moments and those moments at the end of your life that you're going to be able to do it. And you simply must follow me. Following Jesus, in Peter's case, was costly, but worth it. The same is true for you and I. Following Jesus is sometimes costly, but it's worth it. And it's important for us to know that following Jesus matters. Are we willing to follow Jesus where he leads us? Are we willing to follow? Then, in the most Peter kind of way, which we didn't read yet, verse 20 says, Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved, John, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during supper and asked, Lord, who will betray you? Peter asked Jesus, what about him, Lord? Jesus replied, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? As for you, follow me. So the rumor spread among the community of believers that this disciple wouldn't die, but that isn't what Jesus said at all. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? Peter, after being told he was going to die for serving Jesus, is like, that's not fair. I mean, if I got to suffer, he should too. Now, there seems to be a little rivalry between those two for some reason. But Jesus tells Peter, don't worry about him. It's not your problem. You have one job to do, and that is to follow me. Worry about yourself, and I'll take care of the rest. That's essentially what he tells Peter. He basically tells him, look, don't worry about anybody else. Worry about you, because your worry, when you thought you had it all, when you thought you had everything, you struggled. And we're not talking about that. But the fact is, look, you need to worry about following me. There's probably some positives in this that would work for us as well, that we ought to worry about following Jesus, not always fixing everyone else around us. Now, when we're a community of believers, it's important for us to encourage one another to do good things, right? It's, the scriptures teach us that. But oftentimes, what God is doing in our lives is different than what he's doing in somebody else's life, and we just have to follow Jesus. And as we're following Jesus, as we're becoming more and more like him, it's going to be good for us. Does that mean we never look out for anybody? No, we always do. We should always be looking out for people. We should always be encouraging. We should always be lifting people up. But really, when we look at it, we can't worry about them. We can't force them to do anything. What we can do is bring the presence and power of Jesus into those moments. Look, I've had some really fun conversations over the last couple weeks with different people in different moments and places that I go throughout the city. And I'm a little careful in how I say it, only because if they watch, I really don't want them to know I was talking about them. Is that fair? But I've had some really cool moments to have conversations about who Jesus is and who we are as believers that are really fun. People are not following Jesus. And it's just a cool moment just to know that Jesus is at work in those times. And all I'm doing is just pointing people to look a little closer at Jesus. And not to take what their past experience has been to keep them from allowing Jesus to show up in their lives. Think about it. Peter could have allowed his past experiences, his past failures, his past rough spots in his life to keep him from coming to the shoreline to hang out with Jesus. And he could have looked at his fellow disciples and said, look, guys, you go. If I show up, the building's going to catch on fire. The church is going to be struck by lightning. Like, I've heard these kinds of things before. People tell me those kind of things. Oh, man, you don't want me coming to your church. It'll get struck by lightning. And I'm like, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. I mean, the building's never been struck by lightning before, but so far, we've been in pretty good shape. I'll take my chances. And so when you think about it, like, there's people think about their past and they think there's no way God would want me. And if we really look at Peter's life, we would probably come to the same conclusion. He's not like the picture of perfection, which is why I love him so much. Because he gives us all hope, and there's not a single person in our world that hasn't made some of the same mistakes as Peter, who hasn't denied God. Like, there's people who have followed him, and they've like, oh, I'm never going to church. I'm never doing this. I'm never doing that. God has failed me. I hate God. The people who say all kinds of stuff. You know what's amazing about that? Is Jesus has the same approach to them that he had to Peter, and that is, come, I'll make you breakfast. I'll prepare your breakfast on the Sea of Galilee, on the beach of the Sea of Galilee. I love you. That's what Jesus' response to people who, even in our world and friends and family that we know, right? They're like, no, I could never, like, God would never forgive. I'm telling you, he will. And so we need to start looking at everybody that we see and just go, Jesus, how can I be present for them like you were for the disciples? How can I show up like you did on the shore of the Sea of Galilee and cook some breakfast? Again, some of us are not qualified for cooking breakfast, but next best thing, just hand them a gift card to Starbucks, okay? I mean, it's, all right, so not, but yeah, do that. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Which, this week, when I had some opportunity, some people that I invited, and they didn't come for Easter, but they were having a bad Monday the week before, so I figured this Monday wasn't great either, so I showed up at their work and handed them all $5 gift cards at Starbucks. Because I just want them to know. I know they didn't come, but I just want them to know that I want to make your Monday better than it was before I got here. Like, I just think we want to figure out how to bring Jesus to every place we go. And that's what Jesus was doing with the disciples. He was saying, look, I get it. It's a normal day for you guys. I told you I was coming. I'm here. And he does a miracle. And we may or may not see miracles. But here's the thing. We might see miracles. In the ordinary moments of our lives, when Jesus shows up, guess what? It's possible that miracles can take place. Because Jesus shows up in those moments, and it's not about you and I, it's about him. And when he shows up, things can happen that are crazy. Like, again, there's no significance about 153 fish, other than there was 153 fish. They've tried to say, oh, that was 153 different species of fish that were in the Sea of Galilee. It's not true. It's just, like, there's a lot of things they just kind of created, even back. Like, we're talking about 300s. Like, they were trying to figure out what all was going on. But there was the deal. Like, it was about 153 fish. It was God's miraculous provision. And he wants to do that in the ordinary moments of our lives. Because anytime we help people see him, there is a potential miracle taking place. And the greatest miracle of all is for people to understand Jesus and to know him and to follow him. And it doesn't matter what they've done. He loves them and cares for them. No failure is final when Jesus gets involved. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this morning. Thank you, God, for this time. I pray, Lord, that you will speak to every one of our lives. And Lord, that you would help us in the ordinary moments of our lives to see you at work and to recognize you working in the lives of others. Lord, that we will see you in our workplaces, in our schools, God, in the classroom, in the places we go, in the places we interact, whether it be a restaurant today or the moment, whatever those moments are, Lord, would you show up and help us as we make you known, as we follow you? Would you help us point others toward you? And may people see you through our lives. Lord, that we would make a difference in the world in which we live. Lord, and I pray for some of those people that I've had conversations with over the last few weeks, and Lord, that they would just continue to come closer and closer to you. That they would know you. That they would know, no matter what they've done in the past, Lord, you're willing to forgive. Lord, there's nothing that can keep them from your love. And you want to do great things. Lord, and you want to do great things in us, and you want to do great things through us. Lord, I pray that every person in this room will once again commit to following you. That if you were asking us just like you were asking Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know I do. Do you love me? Lord, you know I do. Do you love me? Lord, you know I do. May we hear the same instructions that you gave Peter. Follow me. Lord, help us to do that in every place we go. And Lord, that we would expect you to be present in those moments as we're following. And that you will do beyond what we think or imagine. Lord, thank you that you are good. In Jesus' name, amen.